Good afternoon, or I should say morning chat in the afternoon. I'm not losing weight. Should I lower my calories? It's a question that comes up a lot. And you would think the logical answer would be yes, but actually sometimes there's a few questions that we want to ask first. So number one would be, how long have you actually been consistent with those calories for? Because quite often, if you've said you're at X amount of calories, let's say for example, your calorie range was 1,300 calories, let's say, to 1,500 calories, and you were at 1,400 calories, say, aiming for this day by day, but you had meals out, you had weekends away, and you weren't at that, you weren't that consistent. Rather than just going in a bit harder, you've got to look at, okay, was I actually at 1,400 calories? That's the first question. Number two is, where did you get these calorie ranges from? If you use a calculator, like if you go to frucifit.com/how many calories do I need? That's frucifit.com/how many calories do I need? There's a free calculator on there where it will give you a range. Hey, Carol, it will give you a range. So the range will say from here, extreme fat loss, here, fat loss. Now, obviously that's generated by an algorithm that is done by you in terms of your stats, in terms of height, weight, and your physical activity. Of course, there could be error in that, right? It's very easy to overshoot how active we are. We might have said we're extremely active when actually we're moderately active. And that can make quite a big difference to how many calories it gives you. So I always say on there, do go a bit cautious with how active you are. So don't go extremely active if you feel like, yeah, but I go for a walk every day. Like, go on the safer side, whether that's lightly active or moderately active, rather than like really active or extremely active. That'll be the second part. The third part would then be, in terms of your tracking, how are you tracking? And I say that because if you've got a range like extreme fat loss and fat loss, like I use the example 1,300, 1,500 calories, and you're at the moment more at 1,500, could you try the lower end first? And could you be really consistent at that? Head down, maybe don't weigh yourself if you are triggered by the weight sometimes, for a month, or weigh yourself every day and divide it by 7 so you get an average. And then at the end of the month, see how consistent you've been at that, and then make a decision whether it's worked or not. And my point being here is, what's the rush? Sometimes we're in such a rush that I think it actually slows us down. And the other point of this I want to make is that, are you tracking everything? And I say this because quite often, like I was talking about, the bites, the licks, the taste, they add up. You know, the finishing the kids' dinner, I know that all too well. You know, just the little bites, a little bit of yogurt, a little bit of banana, a little bit of apple, the odd bit of orange. You know, like, am I going to throw away 2 nicely bit of orange segments? Am I going to save them for later? They're tough decisions, and sometimes it's already wasted. Remember that. Remember your goal. It was wasted the moment they finished. That's okay. Don't ruin their relationship with food. It's wasted already. Whether you put it in the bin or whether you eat it, it's wasted anyway. Remember that. And I think this is a big one, because although it doesn't seem a lot, like the odd few nuts, the odd few oranges, the odd segments, the odd bit of banana, the odd bit of yogurt, the odd pick at the crisp, whatever it is, the odd bit of popcorn, it doesn't seem a lot at all. And it's not a lot, but it could be enough for you to go from losing a bit to maintenance. And now you're not losing at all. And now you're like, do I need to go lower overall? And actually, we just needed to get a bit more aware of those bites, those licks, and those tastes. So that's the first part on here. Then we can go a little bit more into this and go into, okay, have you been losing weight? Yes. Cool. Well, maybe you have hit a plateau. Maybe you haven't. Remember that as you get lighter, you need fewer calories to survive. So as you've lost body fat, what used to you lose weight here, you're now smaller, so you burn fewer calories just to survive. Your metabolic rate has gone down, right? It just will. Unless you've built significant muscle, which you might have if you're doing quite a lot of resistance work, etc. That's going to stand you in good stead, and that's why we promote it so much in terms of fat loss, in terms of muscle, in terms of longevity, you name it, bone health, you name it. It's going to be a good thing. It can only be a good thing, and it can be really important in terms of that. So in terms of, to go along with that as well, would be your protein intake. So what we've got to think about here is, one, because you've lost a bit of weight and you've become smaller, what you might want to do is, one, consider how consistent you are and how long you've been consistent. Like I said above, so if your aim is 1,500 calories, have you been really consistent for a month? Yes or no? Can you say yes to that? If you can, great. If you've hit a plateau, hey Judy, and it's a true plateau, well maybe then we can consider changing it a little bit here. Because you've got to make some compromises, right? We want this to fit your lifestyle, but at the same time, we don't want this to not get results, right? As hard as it is, sometimes you've got to make those changes. So in terms of protein intake, then we can look into that. Okay, are you hitting your protein intake? Not just for satiety, that keeps you full for longer, that makes you easier to then hit a calorie deficit, but also for muscle. Like if you can keep muscle, preserve muscle, and even build muscle, especially if you're adding in resistance exercise plus eating protein, if you can build muscle whilst losing body fat, you're going to get recomposition, which is going to help tone you up. You might then be happier with the way you look at a higher weight, which then changes the ballgame a little bit. We're less obsessed with weight, more to do with body composition. Not to mention that will help our blood sugar management, blood sugar levels, our risk of diabetes, metabolic health, quality of life. It makes everyday tasks easier. It makes getting up and down from the floor easier. It can help with symptoms like arthritis, things like that. Of course, we've got to manage the pain. It's a fine line, which is really important. But, hey Denise, good morning, or afternoon I should say. Already said good morning. But these are all little things to think about along the way. And I could go on and on and on with this, but sometimes it's those small changes. And like I said the other day, it's the context, which is really key. Like I spoke to someone this morning, and actually they were adding in some like seeds and nuts and things like that to their diet because, well, seeds and nuts are healthy, and they are. That's totally true. Seeds and nuts, nutritious, high, good fats. But if your goal is fat loss and you're struggling with fitting in with family life, what to eat, and then you're just eating seeds and nuts because they're healthy, are they actually just taking calories away from your flexibility and actually bumping you up from deficit to maintenance? Actually, are we overthinking this here because we're reading so many things? And sometimes it comes down to getting that advice and following that advice to the letter rather than jumping to that, jumping to that, jumping to that, jumping to that. Because actually sometimes that just makes everything a little bit more complicated. And that's not to say you can't have seeds and nuts, they're absolutely fine. But if you're just adding them in, I would say, what were you having instead? Are you hungry when you're having them? If no, do you need them? 2, what would you have instead if you didn't have them? If you were like a chocolate bar, well, that's a great choice, right? It's nutritious, probably about the same calories. So you've got to always consider these things when it comes to it. And one thing I want you to take from that is, can you deep down say you've been really consistent when it comes to lowering your calories even more from it? And it might be a case of you've got so many social events, so many meals out, that you do need to lower your calories during the week, which will then mean that you're not actually lowering your calories overall over the week. Your calories remain the same over the week. For example, if you're on that 1,300 calorie example, that's 9,100 calories a week. Your 9,100 might stay the same, but instead of having 1,300 calories Monday to Friday, you have 1,000 calories Monday to Friday. Then you got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 1,500 calories extra to spend on the weekend, which gives you that bit more flexibility if you've got barbecues, meals out and things like that. So there is a strategy and a take home from this. Let me know how consistent you've been. Let me know any tips, tricks you've had to stay consistent with that. Is it protein intake? Is it water intake? Whatever it is, small habits, compound effect. Hope that helps. Any questions, as always, just let me know, and